From the downtown Tyler Visitor Center, this is Roses and Weeds.
Welcome to the newest episode of Roses and Weeds, a City of Tyler podcast created to keep you up to date on all the things going on in our beautiful city. I'm Peyton Weidman with the City of Tyler Communications team, and joining me is a special group of guests, including Mayor Don Warren, Assistant City Manager Heather Nick, and our consultant David Jones with Freese and Nichols. And we're here today to talk to you about the comprehensive plan. But first, before we dive in, let's do a little brief intro, and we'll start with Mayor Warren. If you could just give us some details about your time as mayor and what you love about Tyler.
Well, I've served 3 terms as city councilman for District 4, and now I'm in my 3rd and final term as mayor. And regarding the comprehensive plan, I've had the fortune of being involved with this for the last 2 5-year updates. And so now as we redo the comprehensive plan, it's kind of nice to start from a fresh beginning for a whole new plan. And I love the name of it, Tyler Tomorrow. And we always are looking into the future, so we are about Tyler Tomorrow.
That's right. So he already gave you a little sneak peek. The title of our next comprehensive plan is Tyler Tomorrow. But before we dive into that too much, let's go over to Heather Nick, if you don't mind, just giving us some information about your role with the city.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm Assistant City Manager. I have the fortunate opportunity to be able to interact with various departments. My home department is planning. I love planning, urban planning, and I get to be around a lot of planners, and you know, help plan for the future of the city. I've worked in GIS. I work with the GIS department now, building services with our permitting center, streets and stormwater. You know, right now we're actually working on an AI readiness initiative. So I get a bit of a taste for everything, and that just keeps it exciting. And I love to help serve our city, as well as trying to improve all of our processes and make things more streamlined and keep up with technology.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. And then looking over at our consultant, David, if you could share your role with the city as helping us prepare for this comprehensive plan update.
Yeah, hi, thanks. And I'm with Freese and Nichols. We've been contracted with the city to help them through this process, reaching out to the community and getting their feedback and helping prepare Tyler for the next 20 years. I've been with Freese and Nichols for almost 4 years, and I have a career that goes back about 15 years. Love helping cities, working with cities. I've had the honor of being a city employee as well as being a consultant. So love what I do and love the opportunity to work with cities like Tyler.
Well, great. Well, thank you all. We're so excited that we get to dive into this topic. But first and foremost, let's cover the basics. What is a comprehensive plan? Open to anybody.
Well, I'm going to start. When I first got on council in 2014, I thought the exact same thing. What is the comprehensive plan? And I thought, this is actually, I got a book from Heather, Tyler 21, and she gave me this book, and it's 3 inches thick, if not 4. And I thought, what is this? This is just a bunch of type. This is just a bunch of words that are in a book. And I thought, this is not a living document. This is just a book. And so it's taken me years to realize that it's not just a book, it's a living document. And so it's been something that I've had to learn that we did it in a plan about going forward. So it's not just a book. I still have your 3 or 4 inch book in my office, and I read it from time to time.
Right. So the Tyler 21st plan, which later became the Tyler First, has helped guide the city's path for the last about 20 years, correct?
Yes.
And so what are some major projects or initiatives that we saw identified from that came to fruition?
Well, I'll start. There's a whole section in the book about downtown. And when you look at what we're doing downtown, it's come to life. And hope to break ground in August on the new downtown revitalization project. That's one thing that I really saw come to life. Another section which is very close to my heart are our parks and recreation is a segment in the book. And it talks about improvement of parks. And remember, this was a plan that was set in place 20 years ago with the 5-year updates. But prior to 10 years ago, or really 8 years ago or less, we did not spend any money on parks. And now, over the last, how many years, Heather? 6 years, 8 years?
Yeah, something
We've
like
spent
that.
over $15 million on parks, which has been grant money as well as donations and also half-cent money. So I've seen those two areas where we have really done a lot and been a part and we've followed through with what's in the comprehensive plan.
And so how is Tyler Tomorrow going to build on that?
Right. I think what we look at is what has changed. And that's one reason why we update the plan like we do. We do, those iterative updates, but we also do, a 20-year update because a lot of things change in 20 years. Think about 20 years ago, I was involved in developing that plan. And I think it was about that time that iPhones were just now coming out, and I was trying to be convinced to buy one, and I was hesitant. So, so much has changed. Now I can't go anywhere without my iPhone. But think about not only that technology, but think about just what has changed in our community, and looking at the economy. We did focus on what our strengths were back then. We're a regional hub. We learned more about ourselves. We have invested more in our strengths, knowing about how, we're a regional hub for medical, for retail, and all of our universities. We have so much to offer, and we know that if we don't keep planning for what's to come, then we will be behind. Like the mayor was saying, it's taken us almost 20 years to implement some of the things that were in that original plan. So we're really looking forward to, doing that analysis of where are we today and where does our community see us in the future?
Yes, hence the name Tyler Tomorrow. And so what are some of the key topics and issues that we're looking to address with the Tyler Tomorrow comprehensive plan?
Well, we know that Tyler's adding about 1,000 residents every year, net residents coming into the city. So on a year-by-year basis, that obviously sounds like a lot of people. But then when you look on a 20-year basis, that's 20,000 new people. All of those people are not only going to need places to live, but there's going to be a demand on city services, water, sewer, streets, trash pickup, emergency services that those new residents are going to create. So what this plan helps allow us to do is to assess where we're at today, see what the needs of tomorrow are going to be, how we pay for and fund those services, and how we balance that with all the other needs and priorities of the community.
Perfect. Well, right now we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about creating great places in Tyler.
The historic Liberty Theater has been entertaining audiences for generations. Inside these walls, entertainment leaps from the screen to the stage. Music performances stir your soul and inspire you to get out of your seat. Come lose yourself in the magic of Liberty Hall.
Welcome back. In this segment, we're going to be talking about how is this plan going to help our community and create great places in Tyler. And so one of those ways that the plan is looking at creating great places is a resilient Tyler Tomorrow. But what does that mean?
Well, I'll start off. A minute ago we were talking about downtown. And the 2007 comprehensive plan talked about revitalizing downtown. And that was kind of it. That was it in a nutshell. But as we come forward with thoughts and ideas, we start talking about connectivity and walkability, and we talk about the hospitals, we talk about the TJC and the colleges. We got to connect them, and the best way to connect them is with a trail, and not just a trail, but maybe a trail next to a railroad track. And so you just get to where you start dreaming and imagining, how can we have students and people that work at the hospitals get on the trail, ride their scooter, walk, come downtown, have a meal, and then go back to work. So that's something that is kind of new that we're going to get into the new plan, I hope, that wasn't in the old plan.
Yeah, and also looking at resiliency, it's like, how do you maybe bounce back from an economic downturn? I mean, we hope that doesn't happen in the future, but it does. And thinking about the last one we had, Tyler, we fared pretty good, but I think it's because of the diversity of our economy, and making sure that we're maintaining that diversity and we're building on that, and we know the value, and I think we've identified that through how we're updating this plan. We're making sure that we're updating our Midtown plan, where we have our medical district and our TJC, our junior college. We're also updating the UT Tyler University Woods plan, capitalizing on those strengths in our community. And, it's interesting. It was said earlier today, and I've heard it before, where, we are a college town, but sometimes it doesn't feel that way. And, with the mayor and the excitement of, having that connectivity and the trail and just these opportunities to see more lively, activity and entertainment and different options for everyone that either lives here, visiting, or is checking out Tyler to make it their home.
Right. And so, David, I have a question for you specifically. And so when you're helping us put together this comprehensive plan update, we talked about, the economy. We talked about certain areas of Tyler, resiliency, mobility. That's a lot. So what are some of the key areas that y'all are really pulling data on for us to have stats to back this plan?
Yeah, sure. Well, just to piggyback on what the mayor and Heather were saying, the key thing that we definitely want to do is listen to the community, find out where the community wants to go, the experience of someone who lives in Tyler or works in Tyler. How can we make that a better experience? You use the term opportunities and choices, which I think really hits the nail on the head. Because when we're looking at data, we don't want to just have raw data as to how many housing units we have, what's the price point, how many jobs do we have, retail offerings. We want to make sure that there's something for everyone, because that provides opportunities for people to move into Tyler and also to retain the businesses and the residents that we have today, so that they can grow with us and move from one house into a bigger house, have a family, and make a life here and contribute.
And so going back into some of the key areas that we're looking at, I know part of this plan is Midtown, like you mentioned, and then we're also doing some other sections. What are some of the highlights for those?
Well, I'll start off. Several categories in the book, so to speak. You got an area on land use, housing, economic development, transportation. People talk about traffic all the time. And so that's going to be an area that we'll discuss. And then infrastructure is something that we deal with on a daily basis. Most people don't realize that there's pipes under the ground, and they don't want to spend money to fix pipes under the ground, but it's necessary, and we've got to plan for the future. But I'd say some of those are the main categories that we'll be dealing with.
And so what's some of the most exciting things that are coming up in this plan that y'all are, wanting the public to be more engaged on?
Looking at what our community has already said, I believe David mentioned it, that we started out this process months ago. There's a lot of data collection. Part of it is starting out with a community-wide survey where we're doing a statistically valid survey of our community. And we're trying to find out, okay, what is it about Tyler that excites our community? What do they want us to focus on? What are maybe some things that we need to work on? And so that really helps inform us, and it helps us guide how we're going to work through this plan, and maybe really hone in on some areas that we need to work on. And by doing that, we know that this statistically valid, because we know that this is the general sentiment of our community, and it's something that's reliable that we can count on to help guide us. Now, granted, like David said, we're going to go out there and we are going to engage with the community. We will have an open house. I think we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But we want to hear from the community. I don't think that really any of us have very set ideas on what's going to happen at this point, because this is a community driven plan. And we want to know that the decisions that we make in the future are based on how this community-driven plan helps guide those decisions.
Mm-hmm. And so actually, since you just brought it up, let's go ahead and dive in. So there will be an open house to gather more community input. I don't believe we have a date set yet, but we will be pushing that out to the public as soon as we do. But what are some of the things people can look forward to at the open house?
Yeah, I can talk about that. And just to set the stage, Heather mentioned the statistically valid survey. We've also met with council, met with our steering committee. And if you've been around town, you might have seen some interactive boards that have popped up in various locations. We were also at State of the City. So the engagement process has started, and it's been in the works for months. But we haven't yet gathered the entire community together or invited them to come to a single location and say, here's some activities that we want to engage with you on, and we want to get some feedback from you on the vision of Tyler tomorrow. Where do you see Tyler in 20 years? What do you think are our strengths or our weaknesses? What different types of development would you like to see? We don't know what we don't know, and that's why we do the statistically valid survey, but that doesn't capture everything, because there's other forms of feedback that we want to get from folks with regard to, what do you like about your neighborhood? What do you like about your street? What do you not like about it? What would you like to see more of? As you're going to work, you're taking kids to soccer practice, what are the things in your daily life that can be improved through this plan? So we want to invite the entire public out. As mentioned, we don't have a date yet, but it's going to be in a location that's easily accessible and familiar to the public, and we're going to have lots of city staff there and folks from our team who will be able to help explain some of these complex topics to the public and hopefully draw out a lot of good feedback and get people involved.
Yeah, and then also people, if for some reason you're not able to make that open house, we also have a website set up where they can review some of the information and leave comments. Would anybody like to talk about the website? Share some info on what we have for the community to view now?
Yeah, I can talk about that. That's one of the things we were scoped to help out the city with. So we've had the website up and going for a few weeks now. It's tylertomorrow.com. And it's kind of continually updating as we do different engagement events. It's also got some background info that folks can review on their own time. There's about a 5-minute video that you can watch that provides an overview of comprehensive planning, what it is, how you can get involved. And as opportunities come up, such as this Saturday, we're going to be at B-Day in the Garden. That'll be listed on the website so folks can know where they can find us and see some of those materials as we start to develop the plan.
Will there be bees in the garden? Actual bees?
I hope so.
Yes.
Our
hive.
I bet there will be.
Oh, there we go.
But, as David was talking about the website, I am very excited about all segments of our community engaging. One of the things that I think 20 years ago that we didn't really get a lot of is a lot of participation from our younger population. And when I say younger, I mean the kiddos. I mean, the folks that are maybe exiting high school, going into college. Those folks that were like you, Peyton, that were like, oh, I'm never going to live in Tyler. And then you're like, hey, wait a minute. This is kind of cool. Maybe I will. And you are.
Yeah.
So, because we want to keep our talent. We want to keep folks in Tyler. And Tyler is exciting. I grew up in Tyler, too. And I thought I was going to move. But guess what? I'm still here because I've seen the progress over the years. Mm-hmm. And we're doing this plan for that younger generation. They're the ones that are going to be enjoying the fruits of all the things that are implemented that come out of this plan. And so it's so important to hear from that younger population. So I hope that we can see them in person, maybe at that open house or our open houses, other public engagement opportunities. But I know that younger population also is online. And so any way that they can help engage and let us know what their vision is, we welcome it. We want to see it.
So did you ever leave Tyler?
I did for a hot minute.
See, I did too.
And I came back as
I
quick
came
as I
back.
could.
And when I came back, and you know, with my kids and grandkids, and we talk about things to do, and you're right, there are things to do.
Yeah.
And we're going to be surveying people, you know, in the future. You know, what are we missing?
Yeah.
And we'll try to figure out a way to fill the gap. But there are things to do. You just got to, you know, think outside the box. When we go do things, my wife and I, we it doesn't take much for us to figure out something to do. We'll just drive. We'll drive to the lake. And ride around the lake, or go to Lake Palestine, or take a walk on the Legacy Trail. I mean, this stuff we don't normally do, and it's so nice to do something different. You just got to think what it's going to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love showing off the public art we have in Tyler, from Art Alley to the different murals. I think, you know, we're a beautiful city in many ways, and people tend to not necessarily recognize that, because when you see something every day, it becomes so common.
You know, if I'm not mistaken, Tyler's ranked number 4, number 5 is number 1 place in Texas for pets.
Yes, we have in 2024. We received a high rating. We're a pet-friendly city. And so there's lots of patios at restaurants that you're welcome to take your dog to. There's a dog park. I mean, if you come downtown, you're bound to see several furry friends. Just working at City Hall every single day, I get to see a different dog being walked outside, and I love it. I stop whatever I'm doing and look out the window, and I say, now look at the cutest resident in Tyler.
Oh, yeah. We were just at the Miracle League ribbon cutting this weekend, and there was this huge, I think, what was that, a Great Dane? And his name was Winston. He was so sweet. But, you know, you mentioned pet friendly. Thinking about our previous plan, that plan is what helped us introduce the outdoor seating, the patio areas that we were trying to really push, because we knew people loved that. And you know, it is so fun to see that after 20 years we have so many more of those opportunities. And gosh, I guess it helped us with our pet friendly status, right?
Yeah, and you know, and when you think about sitting outside, when we did the amphitheater in 2017, we got so much pushback about having lawn seating.
Oh, really?
You got to have rigid seating. I mean, you don't want to hurt your back. You can't sit in the grass. And you start looking around, there's amphitheaters everywhere with open seating on the grass. And so now we have grass. And people love to sit out there and lay out there. And
We have our movies in the park out there every fall and spring, and it's a huge success.
Oh, it is. I get to hear them in my backyard.
That's right. You're right next door.
I am.
Yeah, I get to hear the bands play from downtown. I live in the brick streets, and so it's fun. I mean, you know, whenever I was maybe about your age, Peyton, we didn't have all these murals, you know, all the art. So Tyler has just kept evolving and growing and becoming more livelier, and I'm so excited to be here and be part of the city and be part of planning it.
Yeah, and so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some common community questions and the next steps in the process and timeline for adopting our Tyler Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan.
Looking for a day of adventure? Start the journey at Tyler Pounds Regional Airport. Grab a bite at the Sky is the Limit Diner. Step back in time at the Historic Aviation Memorial Museum. Turn your dream into reality and learn to fly at Tyler Pounds Airport. Fly in style with the Jet Center of Tyler. Tyler Pounds, where adventure takes off.
Welcome back to our last segment for this episode of Roses and Weeds. Before we dive into those common community questions, let's talk about the next steps in our process and the timeline for adopting the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, so the community snapshot portion of the plan is kind of our first initial stage. That's kind of the stage we're in now. Meeting with our steering committee, kind of kicking off that series of meetings. We're going to meet with them several times. That's city council, various leaders throughout the community. During that process, we'll also be reaching out to the community through a couple of open houses and then strategic events around the city where we're going out and we're meeting people where they are and getting their feedback. So that's going to continue throughout the summer into the fall. We're going to look to start getting into the finalization stage of the plan and start going towards adoption, which will include public hearings around the end of 2025, early 2026 is when we'll look to end the planning process and start implementing.
Perfect. Thank you, David. And now let's dive into it. The most commonly asked question: why is traffic so bad?
One of the reasons why it's bad is some people don't pay attention to what they're doing. Okay, that's just the initial thing I said. And I've said this, people have heard me say it over and over again. You get on Broadway, not at 8 o'clock or at 5 o'clock, but during the middle of the day, you go 45 miles an hour, stay in the center lane, pay attention, get off your phone, and I promise you can just about get from 4th Street to Cumberland Village and maybe hit 1 or 2 lights, but you got to pay attention. Yeah. But I know that's not going to make everybody feel good, but Broadway, looking back, it should have been fixed 20 years ago. And you get to the point where all the businesses are built out. You can't widen it. If you widen it, you take out people's parking spots, and then you don't meet the parking requirements. And so it's just, Broadway is from Broadway to Cumberland is it's too late. TxDOT does have a project from Cumberland going south to Loop 49. They've also got a project on the Jacksonville Highway, but we keep getting pushed back. There's a funding shortage from the state, and so the money goes to 35 and 635 in Dallas, and we scream and yell wanting to get our roads widened, and we can't get them done. So that's part of the issue of why our traffic's so bad.
Right. So for those of you who may not be aware, when the mayor is saying TxDOT, that is the Texas Department of Transportation. Thank you. I just blanked on that. And the Texas Department of Transportation, they own and maintain most of our major roadways in Tyler, such as South Broadway Avenue. I said South, but Broadway Avenue, Old Jacksonville Highway, Biloxi, and several others, the Loop. And so we work together in partnership, but a lot of the times, like the mayor mentioned, there are projects that get pushed back, and we end up with where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, I think they experience the same type of funding, challenges that sometimes the city has as well, and that's why planning is so important, because when you do have limited resources and you're counting on that funding, and maybe, different things happen, you need to make sure you have a plan and that you have prioritized, what are your priorities, because we have to be so careful in, just thinking about our low tax rate. We know that our community wants to keep that low tax rate. And in order to do that, sometimes, that really means that we have to make the tough decisions, or at least the staff has to make the recommendations for our leaders to make the tough decisions to identify, what is the priority. And when you can see the full picture and make a really fully informed decision based on your current situation and whatnot, that really helps make those decisions when you do have limited resources.
Yes, and we don't want to say anything bad about TxDOT. We have a great partnership with them. It's just like Heather said, the funding can get pushed back from other areas. It's a state organization. We're a city.
Y'all are entirely too nice. if there's anybody listening to this podcast from TxDOT, we love you. We'd appreciate anything you can do to get our streets widened.
When you do have a lot of congestion, and think about where that congestion's at. It's on South Broadway. We're starting to experience it on Old Jacksonville Highway. It's kind of a nice issue to have, because what it tells you is that we have destinations. We have an active retail corridor. We have folks that live in that area in our community and commuting. So, while it can be challenging, it is nice to see that our city is still vibrant.
Well, yes. You bring up a great point. Our population is 110,000 people. But during the day, it grows to 250,000 people. So the streets aren't full just because of the 110. It's full because of the 250.
That's correct. Right. Yeah. Yes.
And you know what it means if our streets are not, if we don't have traffic? that means nobody's coming here. It means
Yeah.
you got a dead city, and we don't have a dead city.
No, that's right. We have a vibrant city.
Amen, sister.
And I will say, there are other ways to travel throughout Tyler. I usually take a different road than Broadway Avenue and get to my destination with minimal traffic. I think a lot of the times people just stick to our main thoroughfares and don't realize, oh, I can take a side road that's not Broadway or Old Jacksonville or Old Bullard right there, because those three
Oh, yeah.
most people know of.
I know. I was on my way to Faulkner Park this weekend, and me and a fellow coworker were talking about how long it took us, and we were essentially coming from the same place, starting point, right? She took one way, and I took an alternate route. It's always good to have alternate routes.
Yes.
Right? It took her 30 minutes to get there. Took me 15.
Exactly.
So think about those alternate routes.
And you want to know, when I say I don't always take Broadway, I mean even going north. There's one time there was something we were doing at the Glass Rec Center, my team, and so I left City Hall. I went a shortcut. I got there faster than everybody else who took Broadway. So
Drop the mic.
that's right. It's all about just knowing where your destination is and outthinking the others. Outthink the other drivers. That's what you have to do.
But to get back to the comprehensive plan, when David talks about growing 20,000 people in 20 years, we got the South Tyler mobility study that we're working on, and we've got 9 different routes that need to be implemented at some point in time. And so we'll look through those 9 routes, and we'll prioritize to figure out which ones needs to be done first. And we'll get the traffic off Broadway. We'll find alternate routes. And this whole plan is about planning for the future. And so we are planning for the future with these alternate routes, and this will be part of the discussion for the plan.
Yes. And of course
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, David. No.
I just want to add into what the mayor said with the land use plan. Land use and transportation are two sides of the same coin. So when we're talking about transportation, we can give people more ways to go. We can add capacity. We can give them more ways to get there. We can also make it so that they don't have to make so many trips. We have a land use pattern right now that is, let's call it a traditional land use pattern, where you have commercial uses over here, you have residential uses over here. We know that as redevelopment occurs, there's going to be less opportunities to go out and build on a new piece of land. There will need to be redevelopment that occurs. So in accommodating those 20,000 people that are coming to Tyler, we're going to have to be smart and think about where can we fit new residential or new businesses in our existing areas. And one of the benefits of that can be you have less reliance on making vehicle trips, and you're not adding as many cars to the roads. It's not always easy to take cars off of the road, but you can give them alternatives and have more efficient land use that helps address some of those problems.
Yeah, so we already talked about in a previous segment the Midtown proposed trail from the hospital district down over here to downtown. But one of the most asked questions we did receive was, why doesn't Tyler have more sidewalks, walking paths, or trails? So are there any other avenues that we're exploring with a comprehensive plan?
As far as the sidewalks, when Tyler was developing, we had our downtown, this was Tyler, this area right here. And it's hard to imagine, but, in the area where we have Burkefield Park and the Burkefield Shopping Center, just, a mile or two down the road, that was our suburban area, okay? I mean, that was the outskirts of Tyler. So, we developed as really a car-centric, after a certain period. And when that was happening, and that happened all over the country, that was a period where we may not have invested so much in sidewalks, And over time, like our land use policies and what we implemented through development, we may not have required sidewalks to be installed. So what you can see when you look throughout the city is there's going to be areas that have sidewalks, and then you're going to have like a gap, like, hey, there's no sidewalks here. What happened? Well, it was because of those policies. And I believe it was in the 90s, we resurrected the requirement for sidewalks because we realized, hey, sidewalks are important.
Mm-hmm.
People want to move around, right? And so that's one element as to that question about sidewalks. Sidewalks are important, and we do identify funding and make sure that we're trying to allocate resources to expanding our sidewalk network every year. And so that does happen. And we also have plans for walking paths and trails. However, we do have to prioritize our resources and our limited resources that we have in that area. But at the same time, looking at what our community's desires are to see more and more of these trails and walking paths, we know that that's a priority for our community, and we try to really embrace that and use that in the decision making. And gosh, for years now, I've been so excited to see just more and more trails come in. We really take advantage of grant opportunities, that we get through TxDOT and other areas, and I know this is something that's a passion for the mayor too.
Oh, it is. I live 2 doors down from Burfield Park, and people are parking or walking that park every morning, the trail that goes all the way around it, every single day. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways too. We can kind of leverage that through the plan, is not only identifying the areas where trail connection should happen, but also setting up our development ordinances, like zoning and subdivision ordinances, to provide mechanisms for acquiring right-of-way or working with developers to help fill those gaps. That also helps with connecting our street networks through the South Tyler Mobility Study and achieving those priorities. Another nice alignment is that aligning the land use plan with the trails can help maximize the use of those trails, but the trails can also serve as a source of foot traffic for development. So if you look in places like Dallas and Fort Worth, there are locations where along the Trinity River you have trail-oriented development, and that's really kind of a piece of what drives foot traffic to restaurants and shops, that people are using the trails and then they stop and they have coffee or they have a bite to eat or they have a drink. We can help align that through the land use plan, particularly in areas like the Midtown plan.
Yeah, I know. I've been nerding out as a planner, envisioning that with that walking trail over there, and just seeing how it's such an opportunity just waiting to happen. Yeah.
But even the existing trails that we have, when you think about Legacy Trail out by Fresh,
Oh yeah.
how many people use it? I know a lot of people use it, but do we do enough communication? Do we promote it enough? Do we put it on our Facebook page? The mom and the dad and the kid on the bicycle, with music in the background, and push it. We talk about things to do for the young people and the older people. Maybe we need to have a section in the plan for communicating to everyone on the things that there are to do here in Tyler.
I think so, because I know at my college town, for some reason, me and my friends, we found out that there was a trail. And so we started walking this trail, and I was like, I grew up in the country, so I'm like, this is perfect. I feel like I'm back home in Texas for a little bit because I'm out here in the woods. And so when I learned about Legacy Trail after coming back to Tyler and being, disconnected, I was like, oh, that's really cool. So me and my friends in Tyler started walking it.
You were mentioning being able to experience nature like you did when you were at home. Those trails and being out in nature, that's really healthy. Not only from a physical standpoint, but it's really great for everyone's mental health, and it helps you decompress and re-energize and just get back and with a fresh perspective. So it's just really important for our community.
Yeah, and if you have any ideas about any of this as we're talking, feel free to pause this episode or wait till the end and visit tylertomorrow.com and provide feedback on the website and let us know whether it's a trail or whatever you're interested in for Tyler. But before we wrap, I do want to ask one more question. This one's a big one. This one's a hard one. How do we keep our taxes so low?
I'll tell you, I sigh on this one. Our taxes are low. Property owners love the fact that our taxes are low. Businesses love it. Everybody loves it. You know, the downside of it is it's hard, like Heather was saying, you have limited resources to pay for certain things. Mm-hmm. And the biggest impact that I'm aware of every year is when we do our budget. And you know, we're big into employee retention. And one of the ways you retain employees is by giving raises. Mm-hmm. And so when you are unable to raise your tax, you've got to come up with that revenue somehow or other. So we want to make sure that our police and fire have the tools they need to keep them safe while they keep us safe. And sometimes the low tax rate is a challenge. Ours is a quarter. You think of Waco and Longview, they're at 57, one's at 70 cents. I mean, you got different towns that their tax rates are twice, if not 3 times as high as ours. We're not able to go up. I know everybody will be glad about that. We can't go up pretty much because of the legislature and laws, and so, you know, our taxes will remain low, and we'll have to just, you know, live with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also, you know, I think our community really stands by a very very passionate about making sure that we make the most of what we have. You know, we are always trying to streamline, to find better ways to do things, so that we are very conservative with the resources that we have. We want to make sure that they're maintained, and you know, sometimes it can be challenging, you know, as the mayor was saying, like during the budget process. Sometimes, you know, we're talking about just like I can, you know, think of like from a streets perspective of, you know, what kind of equipment do we need? What are our, you know, capital needs to help us maintain what we have, or be able to quickly go out and address an emergency. And we want to make sure that we are being responsive to our community, but at the same time knowing that, you know, with the low taxes and our desire to be fiscally responsible, and I think Tyler does a great, you know, I think we're a leading star in that area as far as being fiscally responsible, but at the same time, that also there's trade-offs. You know, you may not be able to create as many parks as people want to see. There's just some things that you won't be able to do as quickly as people might want to have them happen, because we do maintain a low tax rate. And I think, though, what's exciting about this plan, and David can probably speak more to this, but it is looking at, you know, what are our values and what are the trade-offs? You know, in keeping a low tax rate, there are certain decisions that need to be made in regard to land use. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, certainly. You talked about kind of efficiency on the spending side, but in terms of efficiency on the revenue side, every parcel in the city, and there's unfortunately not going to be as many new parcels coming into the city as there were in years past, because cities in Texas are restricted now in terms of what they can annex. So if you're looking at parcels that are currently within the city and what the potential tax revenue is for each of those, you have to start looking at growing more densely. And a lot of people don't like that term, you know, to get more dense, because we like our yards, we like our open space, we like our trees, and the goal is not to turn everything into the city into a multi-level structure, but it's to look at where are areas where we've already got a fairly intense land use, but we can make it more efficient. We can add new units to accommodate those 1,000 residents that are coming into the city every year. And the benefit that has is that it keeps your tax revenue in a positive position. And that means that the city still has revenue that's coming in to pay for the services that people like, and they're able to keep that tax rate low and not place the burden on the existing residents who are here today.
And one last thing about the tax rate. When I got on council in 2014, the mindset that I saw and heard was, I want to redo a park. We don't have the money. We can't do it. And it wasn't long after that I'd ask the question about money for a park. They would say, we don't have the money. We're going to figure out a way to make it work. Mm-hmm. And so you'd apply for grants. And we went out, and for Burfell Park, we got over $1 million in private donations. And so you become creative funding things like that. Mm-hmm. With our parks, we also started charging a tipping fee at the landfill, as our city manager calls it. I call it the dump because it's the landfill. But you charge the tipping fee for people that take their trash from outside the city limits. You charge them a fee. You use that fee to go to parks. So it's really made us think outside of the box on ways to fund things doesn't burden the taxpayer.
Yeah, and that's exciting for me, as I mentioned earlier when we started, is we work with such great, employees, and our council is so supportive. And what it allows us to do is be able to think creatively and innovate. And, it's thinking about those things that, hey, we never thought about doing this before, but why don't we try this? So, sometimes these challenges are opportunities for us to just think about doing something a little different and creatively. So that's exciting, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and so one last thing before we wrap this episode up, let's remind our listeners how they can get involved in shaping the future of Tyler.
Well, they can start by visiting tylertomorrow.com. It's super easy to find. Go out there. You can give us feedback on that website. You can look at all the materials that we have, all of the data that we've collected. It is one of the easiest ways to interact with the plan and this planning process. But we will list all of the other opportunities where they'll get to come out and see us planners face to face and engage with us and tell us, what do you want to see? And please remember, bring the young ones, bring those kiddos, let them interact and tell us what their visions are, because gosh, that the younger population has such creative, imaginations, and that's what we need to hear for a plan that is planning for tomorrow.
Exactly. No, I loved when you said this will impact them a lot, because where will we be in 20 years? Yeah. They will be our not older, but they'll be a little older.
Yeah, well,
and seeing the fruits of this labor now.
Exactly, and they're the ones that we want to encourage to remain living here in Tyler and enjoying what we have to offer.
Yes, because we have a charm.
Yeah.
I'll just add, if you're listening to this podcast, then that means you're probably interested in what's going on in the city. So all the information that Heather just provided, go and tell your friends, go and tell your family, folks, who wonder what goes on at City Hall. It's a great way to get informed. Go out and be an advocate for the plan. I mean, that's what a successful process looks like, is if we're creating folks who can spread that message and make it happen in a genuine and organic way. I mean, that's so much more valuable than just having a few dozen people come to a meeting and, okay, I'm informed now. If you're going out and you're informing other people, then they're going to the website, they're communicating, they're reaching out, then it truly becomes a community plan.
All right, and that's it for this episode of Roses and Weeds. Share with your friends, family, neighbors, and let's get the word out about the Tyler Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan.